the story of Lockheed Martin's first 100 years and ask the big questions. How can we create a more secure world? And defeat unknown threats from unknown quarters? How can we harness new sources of energy, support a growing population, and expand our knowledge of the universe? Lockheed Martin, we never forget who we're working for.
We're going to look at all the military, industrial, defense contractors involved in all these hoaxes for the last 3 years, 3 years. All right, so Paddock Braddock, the killer, is worked for Lockheed Martin. Now, one of the problems with all the casinos is they're all rich, powerful people. Sheldon Adelson would have needed to check off on this before it happened. Trump is probably one of the poorest of the casino owners there. So they had to have a big meeting to make sure everything was going to be cool. Yeah. Genealogy here. This is the USSearch.com. Shauna J. Cox. This is her husband, Donald Gene Cox, 63. This is Nancy Elizabeth Ireland. So Shauna Cox, J. Cox, is at 1031 Monument Road in Kanab, Utah. Let's look. The second person that lives there, Nancy Elizabeth Ireland. The third person, Skip Jordan Johnson, 1, 2, 3. Here's the other people that have lived at that address. It's Donald Gene Cox. That's her husband. Okay, this was an article. Donald talked to the press. He thought the police meant to kill everybody. Shauna Cox, Cox's husband, says they're going to throw a big, expensive legal team at him. Don Cox, his name is. And he says the government, not all things are right. This has always been about putting God back in America and back in our schools. Well, thank you for clarifying. Shauna J. Cox is also Shauna Johnston. She was married to an individual named Johnston, Carl Johnston, earlier. Here's Nancy Ireland. Her name is Nancy Cox. She's related to Shauna Cox, most likely Shauna's sister-in-law. She happens to work for Northrop Grumman Corporation. Here she is, Nancy Ireland. She's worked there 8 years. She's a manager in the Global Mobility Office. Here is Northrop Grumman's website, mid-2015. They won a contract to build the Air Force's next-generation long-range strike bomber, an industry-shaping award that breathes new life into the world's 6th largest defense contractor. They beat out a team of Boeing and Lockheed Martin for the contract. It's going to run up over $55 billion. It's the largest military contract in a decade. Over here they'll talk about it, the subcomponents, but information would remain secret for security reasons. And Air Force officials will make themselves open to Boeing and Lockheed as early as Friday for an explanation of why Northrop was selected, Bunch said. They gotta kiss these guys' butts. They're defense contractors. Where else are they gonna go for a $55 billion contract to build a jet bomber? I mean, come on, what is this? They're gonna make themselves open to talk to these guys and soothe their egos or something. This is Skip Jordan Johnson. He lives at 3951 Parker's Place, Eagle Mountain, Utah. Here he is, Eagle Mountain is his address. That's Skip Jordan Johnson. This is Jennifer Lynn Johnson. That's his wife, 38. Here's Shauna Johnson Cox. Skip is most likely Shauna Cox's son from a prior marriage. So this is Mr. Skip. It's kind of sad. He's got a couple kids that are autistic, and his wife does have a tumor, and he set up a GoFundMe site. You know, people can give money. This isn't about him, and I do not know how deep he's involved in this. Here, Minuteman, 2014. This is the Utah and Army National Guard report right here. Skip Jordan Johnson, he's a master sergeant. This is where he's at, Camp Williams. It's here. Up here at Eagle Mountain, the NSA built a $1.5 billion Community Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative Data Center at Camp Williams. Wow, what a f***ing name that is. Okay, this center is to take all our phone calls and emails and everything. It's going to have 1 yottabyte of data, whatever that is. It's big. Robert Cantel Finicum. He's an interesting character. So they talked to him, the Deseret News. So he talked about his father was a peaceful man and said his death was grossly wrong, blah, blah, blah. His job is he's an analyst with the Utah National Guard. Come on now. What were their Christmas dinners like? Shauna Cox, what'd she do at her family get-togethers? I mean, you would think the news would be covering this. This is a joke. This is a joke. Without the news laying off of everything, there should be a story about these military and all these families. Just look into Grant Vaughn's past and his professional position here. He says he's not an official spokesperson for the LDS Church, and as a federal employee, I am exercising my First Amendment rights outside the workplace and official hours. Nothing I say should be considered to be the official position of the U.S. Department of the Interior. What the heck? So here he is on Lincoln. Grant Vaughn is the senior attorney at the U.S. Department of the Interior. That's the BLM. But right down here on the right, where they have other Grant Vaughns, he's listed as mercenary extraordinaire, United States. This is when they really, really give you a deep thing. We made the whole thing up. What does it matter? They could have put their mother killer. It wouldn't have made a difference. They're telling you this is our territory. Not one on the earth is perfect except the one. All right, they did some work together on his soul because after 2 divorces, he wanted to be sealed in the temple. That took some effort from church clearance. We went through extensive interviews, and Lavoie engaged in sincere effort to repent. I was required by the church to correspond and speak with his former spouses to ensure that he was fulfilling any and all family obligations and that they saw no objection to his temple sealing. The bottom line is that I knew as much as anybody could about him at that time. What I knew was he was, kind of simple.
I ain't nothing but a simple man. They call me a redneck, a reckon that I am, but this thing's going on with me mad down to the core.
Yeah, he wanted to move beyond his mistakes. Lavoie also met with our stake president, a very smart man who had a PhD in physics and was learning Russian at the time as he was traveling from Los Alamos National Labs to check on compliance with nuclear disarmament in the former USSR. Is that all he did? Oh, okay. This was no stake president to fool with. Dun, dun, dun. The recommendation to the office of the First Presidency of the Church to be cleared for temple sealing. The approval came. Lavoie and his wife were thrilled. They told us of the date they had arranged, understanding the distance was far to St. George, where he was going to be sealed, and the bishop happened to be going and surprised them. He says, this is the look on the boy's face that I will always keep with me. Oh, man. And, down at the bottom, his church and I have serious disagreement with those beliefs, no matter how sincerely held by Lavoie. And to his credit, I heard Lavoie tell all news reporters when questioned about the Mormon church condemnation of the armed occupation that what he was doing had nothing to do with the church. It was his own responsibility. Grant Vaughn is his name, and he says that out of respect for Lavoie, he's not going to post any comments here. Thank you.
And her husband and the family were at the shop that night. He was working on his backhoe, and the kids had gone up and gone back to bed, and they were awakened by the fire engine, and I guess that shed was engulfed. Her husband was sitting by the fireplace and the wood stove, and must have fallen asleep. It ignited something, and then it blew something up, and then all of a sudden, when she was trying to get him out, all the bullets were going off, and it was horrible. She couldn't get in, and my son-in-law was killed, and I can't even get home.
This guy had a faulty wood stove. You know what he did for a living? He was with the United States Forest Service doing wildfires, and he didn't even know his wood stove was faulty. Are you kidding me? And this guy was an Eagle Scout, and he liked trapping, and he was good at baseball. You see this in all these things. It sounds like their mother's writing it. It's a bunch of crap. This is Eric Drattel. He was interviewed while the Nice shooting was going on. He was in a bathroom. He's head of a lawyer for the $300 million company Worldwide Data Security, General Counsel, RMS it's called, and this is Mr. Hoax. His wife supposedly was deaf, remember, and she heard the gunshots. We'll look at this story here. Motives for intentional Connecticut plane crash investigated by FBI. Investigators concluded that a small passenger plane that crashed in Connecticut Tuesday was an intentional act, causing a plane to burst into flames in the vicinity of the offices of the defense contractor Pratt & Whitney, which manufactures jet engines. Big military in this area, Connecticut, southern Connecticut. Sikorsky, the military helicopter manufacturers there. The airport's named after it. They've been tied to hoaxes. Connecticut is CIA Central, Sandy Hook. They're building a New World Order community there. Videos done, very long videos, not best quality, that I covered, and she's convicted of raping a 12-year-old with every kind of thing imaginable, from behind up the, whatever. Pushing this thing that women are raping young boys and girls, which there's no reality in. Her father-in-law works for Sikorsky Helicopters. That is the triple dip in Connecticut right there. Sikorsky used to be owned just until a year ago by United Technologies. And then they sold, I think, to Lockheed Martin. They don't even mention the father-in-law. There's only one picture of this girl. They don't go and interview the family. Her brother-in-law is a state trooper in Hartford. Her husband's some geeky music teacher. She's fierce. Her brother-in-law's girlfriend had a baby in the bathroom. It just came out when she was on the toilet, and it gets published in India Today. Like, they're not into natural childbirth. Out in the field, the whole thing is a hoax. The superintendent of the schools? Mrs. Janet Robinson from Sandy Hook. And this is an interview. She says, I come from a military family. My dad was career military. My husband was a Navy pilot. We don't keep guns, I have great respect for guns. She moved to Stratford in the same county, Fairfield County, and she got the school named Victoria Soto School, and she's something else, let me tell you. She's big time because she was teaching teachers
touring the United States before they set her up here. And they made her like the superintendent of the year. I don't even think she was there a whole year. I mean, she left Sandy Hook and got an award. As superintendent in Stratford, she had this sexual abuse case of Zelzecki right away, and she was on national TV. The press was all over it. How does that sync up with Sandy Hook? 2 within a year? Really?
Assistant Superintendent Linda Getcha, both from Sandy Hook. You look into this, schools around Sandy Hook, they're running the scams right now. If you want a crash course in beginning hoaxes, look at Sandy Hook Newtown since the Sandy Hook